Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ordinary Council Meeting number 4555 of Hunters Hill Council. Can I ask you please to all be upstanding? Council would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land and water of Hunters Hill, and Council pays our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We are joined today by Pastor Alejandro Grancha, who's going to lead us in prayer.
Before I pray, I'd like to just acknowledge that I've been asked to pray, which is something many councils around Sydney may not do. And I think it's a great thing to involve church and faith in the meetings. I know there are some people here, maybe you are more of a circular persuasion, and I appreciate that. I acknowledge you being here. And bear with me as I pray, if that's you. But I want to say thank you for having us individual leaders from churches to come and pray for you. We do it with a genuine heart, and so thank you. I also want to read a scripture. I was reading today about anxiety, and read that it's the #1 cause of mental health issues in Australia. 1 in 4 people in Australia will face major episode of anxiety in their lifetime. But funnily enough, the Bible addresses this issue, and I just want to share this before I pray a short prayer. Do not be, this is from Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Would you bow your head and close your eyes as we pray together? Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today at Hunters Hill Council with gratitude in our hearts for this opportunity to gather as community leaders. We ask for your guidance and wisdom as we make decisions that affect the lives of our residents, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. We love Hunters Hill. We ask for your guidance and wisdom in our discussions and decisions tonight. Help us to work together in unity and to put the needs of our citizens first. May our words and actions reflect compassion, integrity, and justice. We pray these things in Jesus' name.
Amen.
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 God bless you.
Please be seated. Proceedings of all council meetings in open session, including all debate and addresses by the public, are recorded and webcast live on council's website for the purposes of facilitating community access. Webcast archives are sorted and available to the public on council's website. The recordings may be disclosed under the provisions of the Government Information Public Access Act of 2009, the GIPA Act. Members of the public attending a council meeting may have their image, voice and personal information, including their name and address, recorded, publicly broadcast and archived, or as an observer or other interested party. Members of the public consent to this use of their image, voice and personal information. Councillors, there are no apologies this evening. Are there any declarations of interest? No. We'll move on to confirmation of minutes of ordinary council meeting held on 23rd of March 2026. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the minutes. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. There is a mayoral minute, councillors, recognising and remembering Rod Stewart, and I will read the report. The Hunters Hill community has lost a remarkable individual with the passing of local resident and veteran Rod Stewart on Sunday, the 19th of April. I was deeply saddened to hear the news and was honoured to pay tribute to Rod at his wake following his funeral, held last Friday, the 1st of March, at All Saints Anglican Parish in Hunters Hill. The church was filled with Rod's family and friends. His legacy was reflected in the many lives he touched, with many sharing stories of his kindness, resilience, intelligence, and his adventurous life. Born in Sydney on the 7th of April 1937, Rod grew up on a farm in New Zealand before moving back to Australia when his father was killed in action in North Africa. He attended Parramatta High School and Cranbrook School. In 1955, he was accepted into the Royal Military College at Duntroon and started his career in the Army. Rod graduated into the Royal Australian Engineers and was a qualified civil engineer. In 1961, Rod married Delane and they had three wonderful boys. His incredible military and engineering career sent him far and wide abroad over many years. Some of the highlights of his career included being posted to New Guinea to build a road network from Wewak to Maprik village in Lumi, attending the School of the Military Engineering at Moorebank. He worked at the Snowy Mountains Hydro Scheme in 1965. He went to South Vietnam as a guest of the US Army in the Mekong Delta with the US Special Forces. He returned to Canberra in Australia and was posted to the Office of Engineer-in-Chief. In 1967, Rod was posted to RMC Duntroon as an instructor military engineering and project and was promoted to Major. In 1969, he resigned from the active list and went to the Pilbara for 5 years, supervising the design and construction of iron ore railways for Lang Hancock. Rod worked in Borneo and the Philippines on road developments and was also a construction manager and chief engineer on the first light rail project in Manila. In 1955, Rod worked in Hong Kong on the West Rail project and in Taiwan in the High Speed Rail project. He then went on to work in Scotland in 2002 on the West Coast Railway upgrade. In Sydney, he headed up a new railway division before retiring in 2013. Rod and his family settled in Hunters Hill in 1985. Rod worked tirelessly across the municipality as a dedicated volunteer of many community organisations and as a valued veteran, including a former president and vice president of the Hunters Hill RSL sub-branch, where he played a pivotal role in the installation and dedication of the memorial wall and supported the Anzac Day March and memorial service. He remained an active committee member, always advocating for veterans and those currently serving our nation. He was a keen member of the Hunters Hill Probus Club and the Pioneer Men's Society. And most recently, he was the president of the Hunters Hill Historical Society for the past 3 years and passionately promoted our rich local history, preserving artefacts and supporting the museum. His contributions to Hunters Hill were invaluable, and I was honoured to present him with the 2026 Hunters Hill Citizen of the Year Award on Australia Day for his unwavering commitment to this community. Council extends its sincere condolences to Rod's family, friends, and all of those in the community who had the privilege of knowing him. He will be deeply missed. May he rest in peace. Councillors, are there any other contributions? Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that thorough and important mayoral minute covering the life of Mr. Rod Stewart and his important contribution to our community. It's also sad to note the passing of several other local citizens in the past weeks. And I do note that there is a additional mayoral minute for Dale Hanrahan, and we'll hear more about him in a moment. But Gary O'Gorman, a barrister and the husband of a former councillor of Hunters Hill, Marie O'Gorman, passed in the last week or so. Christine Edelman, a former mayoress of Hunters Hill, has also passed. And Dr. Mario Adamo, who was a leading dentist and also a community leader. And I never forget the evenings we spent in his house back in the days of fighting the Pulpit Point development. And the group was called Crush in those days. And he also contributed to many other community activities as well. Your excellent minute highlights Rod Stewart's rich and full life. He was a devoted family man and with Delane raised 3 boys. It is often the case that we only know part of somebody's life, and it is only at these times that we find the full depth and engagement which they've had with their community and with others during their profession. As mentioned, Rod's military career was significant, serving our country in several Southeast Asian campaigns and capacities. I remember a talk he gave many years ago now with several other veterans in the yarn, and Council may still have record of that somewhere, where he detailed his experiences and the service that he gave during that time. And it was fascinating to hear him and the other servicemen who had contributed. These stories about building vital, his stories covered many of the vital infrastructure activities he carried out in dense jungle forests in Southeast Asia, and the leadership were ever present, raising to the rank of major. He had significant expertise and is professional engineer, travelling the world and contributing to many significant rail projects. The two most endearing aspects of Rod for me, he was a true gentleman, quietly spoken, engaging personality, and always respectful of others. The second is his willingness to help others and provide strong leadership within our community. Most notably, as mentioned, President of the RSL, sub-branch, and also his role in leadership at Historical Society. It was a shame that he passed just before Anzac Day, as he always played a key role in the ceremonies. And especially during COVID, he commenced a local dawn service at the Huntley's Cove, which has grown to reach several hundred locals at last week's Anzac ceremony. This is also mirrored with what Reverend Armstrong does with his dawn service in the All Saints Church grounds. We as a community were very proud, as you mentioned, to honour his service to the community with awarding him the Hunters Hill Citizen of the Year for 2026. My condolences to Delane and family and his friends, and we will miss and remember Mr. Rod Stewart.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillors, any other contributions? Councillor Cassar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few words. Rod Stewart was an incredibly generous and caring man, and I was honoured to have gotten to know Rod over the past 18 months through his involvement in the community as President of the Historical Society. I can't say I knew Rod for as long as many others, but I can say that he definitely left a lasting impression. I know many in the community are proud to have called him a friend and a mate. I extend my deepest condolences to Rod's wife, Delane, and to all those who knew him. May he rest in eternal peace.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, any other contributions?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, on behalf of the staff, I'd just like to pass on our condolences. Rod was and like Councillor Cassam said, I hadn't known him very long, but he certainly made an impact on me and the team, and that was reflected with the number of staff that attended his funeral service, or his service last week. We'll miss him. We'll miss him coming in for a short chat, which always was a little bit longer than a short chat, but was always well received by us. And as I say, we'll miss him, and we wish his family well. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion, the mayoral minute. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. And with your indulgence, councillors, there is a late item, which is unfortunately another recognition of a significant local who's passed away, and I will read the report. So with sadness that we recognise that local resident Dale Hanrahan passed away on Easter Sunday evening on the 4th of April 2026. Dale was born in Nyngan, far western New South Wales. For any of you who know Nyngan, I have a very great fondness for the Nyngan town. It's about 100 miles this side of Burke, and he was born on the 10th of the 6th, 1953, to Joan and Glenn Hanrahan. He came to Sydney in his mid-70s after a transfer to Sydney from several country postings as a bank teller with what was the Wales Bank, now Westpac Banking Group. He needed to earn extra money as he was planning an adventurous overland trip through Afghanistan and the Middle East on army trucks with friends from Nyngan. His childhood friend Des Kennedy was managing the Woolwich Pier Hotel at the time, and Dale went to work there part-time on the night and the weekends as a barman. He lived above the hotel for a couple of years and returned from London in the hotel's basic accommodation. It was here that he met his future wife, Christine, or Chris, who worked similar shifts at the hotel's barbecue, preparing steaks and salads for the patrons. Dale and Chris were married about 18 months after Dale returned from Sydney. Chris is a local girl from Henley and refused to move out of her much-loved municipality of Hunters Hill. And Dale was totally in agreement, and as he had grown to love the beautiful suburb on the river as much as Chris. They have lived in Hunters Hill for almost 47 years, both in Manning Road and in their present home in Richmond Crescent to this day. Chris is passionate about preserving the history of her suburb of birth, and Dale joined her in that enthusiasm. Dale advocated for the preservation of the old Gladesville Hospital's history and retaining of much of the open green space as possible, as a reduction in the number of planned dwellings when Riverside was passed to the council from the state government, and consequently developed for housing. Both Dale and Chris have advocated strongly for the Priory to be saved and made available for public use. Chris has also been a leader of a residential group in their street when the last untouched original cottage next door to them was at risk of being destroyed by the new owners, and rebuilt as a very large modern house, completely out of character with the local area. The cottages in theirs and the surrounding streets were part of the Sorman estate, which was built by the same builder, contracted by the New South Wales Department of Housing, and were based on two slightly modified examples of the early 1920s homes built for returning soldiers from World War I and services in Europe and North Africa. Chris fought for the fight for 2 long years, and Dale addressed the judge from the High Court on site and was joined on the site by the Mayor at the time and the General Manager and several councillors in support, which they eventually won. After retirement from being an executive manager at Westpac Private Bank, Dale worked for the Home ASAP mortgage broker, and in that capacity had assisted many locals, their children and friends to purchase homes, many within the suburb, and he enjoyed every moment of assisting people to realise their dreams of home ownership. On a social note, Dale was a local dog walking icon. Also, along with each of the couple's much loved white West Highland Terriers, which I think I've seen down at Riverglade Reserve, and both the man and his dog were daily visitors to the Fig Tree Village to collect their daily newspaper every morning. Dale was both a social bowler and president of the Bowls and board and chairman at the Hunters Hill Club in Madeline Street, and was instrumental in the renovation of the club, the employment of the Didi's family in the dining room for catering, and the subdividing and selling of the 2 unused lower greens to raise money that was necessary to enable these changes. This enormous effort by Dale as chairman of the board and the support of the board members brought the club, which was then in the red and at risk of being foreclosed and sold, back to being a vibrant, successful and much loved community club enjoyed by locals and visitors alike. Dale will be sadly missed by his family, Chris, and their adult son, Mitch, his siblings and their families, and the many friends and neighbours who regarded Dale with affection and regard, as is evident by the very large memorial held at his beloved Hunters Hill Bowling Club on Friday, the 17th of April. Councillors, any contributions? Councillor Tanu-Sleeman.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge our wonderful Dale's partner and son, Chris, and Mitch here, and his partner. So many of you probably may or may not know, but yes, I was also I'm a resident of Richmond Crescent, so I've been very fortunate to have been neighbours to Dale for 19 years. So I knew something was unusual when I started seeing Chris walk the dog one morning, and it broke my heart. It broke our whole street. We've only got 10 homes on the street, and I think every word you said, Mayor, absolutely captured the essence of Dale. Dale was first and foremost a family man. He was very much a community man, and above all, he had an absolute massive heart with such a tough exterior. And I want to just, if you can afford me 2 minutes of your time, I want to talk about one story that captures the essence of Dale. So we're a small street, right? And we're very fortunate because we have no neighbours across us, so we've got to get on with all our neighbours on our side.
There's bats.
It's and bats. We have a bat problem. And we had some new neighbours move in. So, you know, we've had a steady retention of our neighbours for the last 20 years, and we had these new neighbours come in, and they obviously had bought a very old property that needed a lot of work. You know, long story short, we had probably we had some wonderful discussions and wonderful arguments about this development, and Dale was always leading the way in his push and maintaining character and maintaining what Hunters Hill is all about. Long story short, property got developed, renovated quite well, and each year we've had famous Richmond Crescent Christmas drinks. So we shut down part of the street and we all turn up and have some drinks. And I decided to invite the newest neighbours, and I get a knock on the door from Dale, and he said to me, "So I heard you invited the neighbours." I said, "Well, they are the neighbours." "Well, if you invite them, I'm not coming." I said, "Dale, oh God." I said, "Dale, there are our neighbours." And he said, "Carol, you know, they've given me a lot of headache and heartache." And I understood where he's coming from. We are a small street, and so you feel the tension. And anyway, and I was really upset with him. So told him where to go. 2 days later, our Christmas drinks turned up and everyone rocked up except for Dale. And then half an hour, just before we wrapped up, he rolled up. He rolled up with some biscuits. And so he's got such a tough exterior, but he had the biggest heart. And he came and he showed what being a good community man. So from the bottom of my heart, I wanted to acknowledge and say, Dale, you'll be absolutely missed. Across the community, I could not believe the turn up we had at the memorial service at the Hunters Hill Club. You know, a very, very well respected and loved man across there, and he will be missed. And our thoughts and prayers are with the family.
Thank you, Councillor Turners-Sleeman. Councillors, any other contributions? If not, I'll put the mayoral minute. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously, and thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Councillors, we now move to item 8.1, Boronia Local Area Traffic Management Plan and update, and there is a recommendation on page 14 of the report. Sorry, councillors. Is there a mover to the motion? Moved, Councillor Kassab. Seconded, Councillor Turners-Sleeman. Councillor Kassab, any discussion?
I just had one question.
Yes.
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the GM or whoever relevant. I just wanted to ask, what were the main reasons for the update to the LATM, and was budget a factor at all in the changes?
I answered the second question first. No, the budget wasn't the issue. It was really just taking community feedback and incorporating that into the plan, working on a few of the intersections and how we're treated around those areas, maintaining the big issue was parking and trying to maintain as much parking through the process. So they were the main things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kassab. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Lane.
Thank you.
Questions or speaking to Lane?
Questions.
Question.
Just two questions. Just one to the General Manager. I noticed that the final LATM had concept design drawings, but there weren't any concept design drawings with this. There was just the high-level sketch at the back. Was there a reason why we didn't get the same level of detail as the final LATM concept drawings for this?
In this report, or?
Yes.
No, we probably just didn't include it.
Oh, okay. Because, yeah, I suppose my second question, which might be through you to the director, was I understand the changes to the speed humps, but the other main change is a reference to there's a tactile treatment on two intersections, which is being replaced with a gateway treatment. Both the term tactile treatment and gateway treatment are not standard terms. They're like gateway is a catch-all term, and tactile usually refers to something completely different. And then I looked at the final drawings, and the tactile treatment that's drawn is let's call it a rumble section on the road in those two areas. And the gateway treatment looks almost identical, except for it's shifted slightly. And so I'm trying to understand what the change is that's proposed in the first two bullets under 3.1. If the director could maybe explain what's meant by those two terms and what the substantive change is.
So I might actually refer to Felix, who is our traffic officer and who has been responsible for delivering the LATM. So Felix, are you able to explain the difference between the two treatments?
Yeah. So actually the tactile treatments and the gateway treatment, the gateway treatment is a standard term from the Transport for New South Wales. And so that is part of the, including the, the tactile treatment and also the signage together. So the tactile treatment is something, is a tactile. And so when you run over it and it will bring up to the driver's awareness that they are entering a different, speed zone. So that is the purpose of different.
So just to clarify, the
Yep.
change is it's still having the rumble strip. It's just now got the sign and the speed decals.
Yes. So, but the the location, particularly for the high street and near the Pittwater Road,
Yes.
the location is slightly different because following the further consultation with Transport for New South Wales, in order to bring up a little bit more awareness of the changes, particularly for the sign, we better to set back the the tactile treatment. So that no, sorry, the gateway and a little bit further back to to make it a little bit visible. So for that area.
Okay. I suppose my general comment then is
Sorry, councillor, any further questions?
oh, sure.
Comments?
Did you consider pedestrians?
So yeah, previously the pedestrians crossing has been, this idea has been considered as well, but unfortunately for following the further investigation, so we found that is not suitable. There's a couple of reasons. Firstly, there's a very minor pedestrian demand in that area. There's no traffic generators nearby, and secondly is that the pedestrian crossing the the physical constraint, because if the pedestrian crossings installed there, it will impact it on the existing bus stop and also the existing driveways nearby, and also that will be impacted on the on-street parking as well. So combine all this constraint, and council consider that we change it to the gateway treatment, because in the area in together with the gateway treatment and the the speed humps maybe 20 or 30 meters away, so is able to achieve the objective of the project.
So just to further clarify, there was a I've forgotten the term, a refuge shown in the previous drawings, which occurs on the corners, which are protected. You can't park on corners, obviously. So are you saying that that's also been removed? So for the reasons you explained, although there isn't parking in that location, there isn't a bus stop, you've also taken out the pedestrian refuge?
Yeah.
So we're not delivering anything for pedestrians on that corner next to a major attractor being Baroni Park?
No.
And at the other end next to the twin bus stops that serve the school?
No, because Refuge Island was not originally proposed in that location, so which was coming from the previous adopted option C plan. So, but
It was in the
after,
drawings.
sorry,
I believe it was in the final drawings though.
no, not in the high street near Pittwater Road location. It does have the.
Councillor, you're talking about High Street and Pittwater Road, because there is.
No, I was talking about Ryde and Park actually.
Ryde Road and Park Road.
Oh,
As
Okay, yeah, no, that's a
and
bit
then at the
confusing,
other
right.
end there was a.
yeah, so
Ryde Road and Park Road.
so Refuge Island has been proposed in that location.
Has been.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor, any further questions before we move on to, yes, Councillor Priest?
Hello, thank you. Maybe just one more question through you,
Hey.
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Felix. The gateway treatment, which is outside of the precinct,
Yep.
so I guess it's to the west of High Street. what do they look like? So is it that you enter the zone before you actually hit High Street?
No, it's not. No, it's not. So it's not outside the zone. It's within the LATM zone because west of High and Pittwater is in the right LGA, and Pittwater is a state road, so we don't have control over that. So there's a gateway treatment proposed for the corner, which I think is what Councillor Lane was talking about. Was
That's what I want to know about.
which one?
North of High Street.
North of High.
North of High Street.
How there's two that sort of sit.
Yeah, so that's at the corner. That's the corner of Boronia Park at the
No.
top.
Then there's one up from the park as well.
Blacksland?
Blacksland or
Yeah.
Barons Crescent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? As in, so that's not the tactile.
It's a tactile
It's
and
tactile.
including the signage as well, the local traffic area signage, that's a 40K zone. So the decision was made that incorporating the Transport for New South Wales comment because the LTA, the local traffic area must be an enclosed area. So when you include the High Street and Park Road, and that will be an opening entry and exit point. So you need to put on a gateway treatment in that location.
As opposed to the Ride roadside.
Rye Road
Where
is not part of the scope.
Yeah.
That's why, the gateway treatment is placed on First Street, Blacksland Road, and also Farnell Street.
And is there a lip that
No, it's a flat one.
it's flat?
It's
Okay.
a grey treatment.
Okay.
But just as what I say, it's tactile. So when the car run over it and
It's
the
bumpy.
driver will feel the bump and,
Yeah.
aware that they are entering different street speed zone.
Okay, and then I just had one more question about the 40 km/h speed limit. I know that the report says in the issues and council's response section that there were requests to reduce the speed limit to 40 km/h. Do you have the statistics on how many submissions requested that?
So that is the main objective of this study and project, and to bring the speed to down to 40K as part of the LTA. So that's why, for the LTA is the speed limit is 40K. So it must be a how to say,
Self-enforcing.
so yeah, all right, thank you. All right, that's self-enforced, treatment. So
to get the grant, the
to,
speed limit has to be 40 km/h.
yeah, that is a speed limit we are proposed for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor President. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions for you, if I may. The diagram that we've got on page 422, which is the layout of the proposed process of the proposed facilities, seems to be a bit of inconsistency in terms of how those treatments are presented in terms of refuge crossings are in some locations, but not others. Some streets have got 2 speed devices, others only have 1. Seems to be placement of the speed devices, which I assume this is where they're going to be, appear to be close to roundabouts or treatment areas. So therefore, they would get more benefit further away and shared along the street. I was just wondering how we got to this point where there's only partial application of the devices in some areas and not others, because I thought we started off with a more holistic approach that was equitable across all community.
I think I can answer that one, Mr. Mayor. Basically through the community consultation, taking the feedback from the residents, there's, as I say, the desire to keep the parking around some of the corners, to do different types of treatments would require a lot more parking to be removed. I think we've reused some of the current locations for where the speed humps have been because there was general acceptance then. So this really is a result of what the community's told us they wanted.
But if you look at the logic of that, why would you have on Park Road near Ryde Road a threshold, a gateway treatment, very close to that, a speed hump treatment, very close to that, a raised pedestrian crossing? Wouldn't it be better to put that speed hump further down Park Road to give some protection further down to reduce those speeds? Anyway, to me, there looks to be a bit more work that needs to be done to get a bit of consistency about it. And I appreciate some residents have their view as to where these things should be. But in terms of traffic management, speed control, there would be some benefit in having a better distribution of some of these things, and particularly refuge crossings. It seems to be very inconsistent with a school nearby. Some have treatment, some don't.
Councillor Williams, sorry, are you on questions or you'd
Oh,
like
yeah,
to speak to
sorry.
the motion?
Yep.
Yes.
No, I'm just
Oh,
explaining.
no, I
what my
tend
question-
to agree with,
Yeah.
I mean, I see what you're saying on that corner particularly, but I would imagine that's the most dangerous corner of all of them in this LATM, given it's the one that people zoom up to do the rat run.
Yep.
Anyway.
Fair enough. The question I do have is aligned with what Councillor Lane raised. We have no visualisation or imagery or drawings of what is going to be put in these locations, and particular reference to the speed humps. And I appreciate you're now going to have them from side to side, which is good, without obstructing parking. But my observation on High Street at the moment, and anywhere in the municipality where we put speed humps, is that they're totally ineffective. They're too narrow, not raised enough, and I noticed there was a concern about noise from raised speed humps. So can somebody explain to me what these speed humps are going to be? Are they what we currently have in the municipality, or are they a more advanced, more comprehensive approach to it? Because as I say, you drive along High Street at the moment, nobody slows down. You drive down Manning Road, nobody slows down. So,
Williams, are you asking whether or not they're the pads or the full line?
I'm asking what type. We don't have any evidence of what they are. So I just wanted to get some clarification as to how effective these will be. I hope they're different to what we've got at the moment because they're totally ineffectual.
General Manager.
Maybe Felix might answer it, but my understanding is they're all fully constructed, bitumen speed humps designed to slow cars down.
Not the pads that have fallen apart at High Street, for example.
Felix, I don't know if you can answer that.
So for the speed humps we propose on High Street will be a raised platform, flat top speed hump. So it is a standard speed hump has been adopted by Transport for New South Wales. So yeah, and so that is the type of the treatments we are using, because High Street is a bus route, so we need to consider that.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Williams, any other questions?
Yes, one final question. Could somebody refresh my memory as to why Barron's Crescent is not included in this? I've been advised speed has become a major problem with a recent accident a couple of weeks ago where a car went through a fence into almost 4 metres, just 4 metres from a bedroom. So I was just wondering if somebody could refresh my memory as to why Barron's Crescent hasn't been considered.
I can. We might need to take that on notice.
Before my time.
Yeah, my recollection was that this study area was the prescribed study area from the funding authority, which was transport and RMS, and we couldn't. We attempted on several occasions to expand the scope, but they weren't accepting of us expanding the scope.
Right. Maybe we should consider looking at that issue considering the increased traffic. So I
Right.
might have already had the current rat run that it is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Councillors, any further questions? Otherwise, we'll go into debate. Thank you, Felix. Councillors, any speakers against the recommendation? For the recommendation? If not, councillor Cassard, right reply? Not required. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Now I move to item 8.2, Hunters Hill Draft 26-27 Operational Plan Budget Fees, Charges and Resourcing Strategy. We have one speaker for this item, Annette Gallard. Thank you, Annette. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks for the opportunity for the Hunters Hill Trust to speak on these items. 3 minutes is not enough to do the documents justice, so I'll confine my comments to key points. The documents raise more questions than they answer. We trust that councillors doing their own detailed assessments will take up this challenge. The 26-27 budget is based on a CPI of 3.7%. Currently, CPI is 4.6% and probably climbing. Council is not responsible for the war between the US and Iran. However, its effects will be felt in almost every line item in this budget. Quarterly budget reviews should not only reflect increases in costs, but propose mitigating action to bring the budget back into line. This should not involve cutting essential projects. The long-term financial plan forecasts operating deficits net of capital items for the entire 10-year period bar one. Are these figures indicative of structural deficits in the operating budget that council cannot fix? This raises questions of which capital items will keep the budget in surplus. Items such as developer contributions can be expected to fluctuate year to year and should not be used to repair structural deficits. Council is to be commended on having included a sophisticated strategic asset management plan. The SAMP isn't clear on whether a standardised condition assessment tool is used that rates property condition of buildings council owns as excellent in the case of Boronia Park Sports and Community Facility, or poor, CA Fairland Hall. Such a tool is standard practice these days. When council plans to dispose of so-called remnant land, which contain property, will council routinely share the results of its condition assessment tool, or will it rely on other arguments such as the financial value of the land? The report on the disposal of 4 Pittwater Road failed to take into account the link with its social purpose. Will this be part of a trend? It should be noted that based on current usage patterns, council would, if it could, sell the Boronia Park facility before Fairland Hall. This brings me to the major items holding these documents together. We assume the voluntary planning agreements funds relate to the Gladesville site-specific plan, but are they from other sites, and if so, which ones? Is not $20 million a huge incentive to wave through development that might, under greater scrutiny, prove to be more problematic? We are concerned about whether the proposed library to which these funds are to be directed is necessary at all when we have 2 state-of-the-art libraries in Lane Cove and Ryde.
Sorry, Annette. Councillors, move an extension of time. Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor Lane. All those in favour? Against? I'll do that again. All in favour? Against? That is carried. Another minute. Thank you, Anna.
We have 2 state-of-the-art libraries in Lane Cove and Ryde, which could be accessible to all residents of the Hunters Hill municipality with some clever negotiation. The proposed $40 million in asset sales is both ambitious and totally opaque. Who knows whether the community values these sites and their potential users over and above the proposed library? Yet you are being asked to sign up to this without the opportunity to scrutinise asset sales in detail. Once committed to the library, there will be no opportunity for second thoughts about whether this is the right course. Councillors will have to be extremely confident in the face of overriding evidence to the contrary that council has the capability to manage a project of this scale. The timing of these asset sales is curious. Small scale next year, but very large in the year 28-29. A cynic might conclude that this relates to the timing of the local government elections and a desire to avoid controversy. The Hunters Hill Trust will be very interested to see whether councillors share similar concerns. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms Gallard. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Annette. I didn't quite follow the logic that you had about building council conditions and maybe explain.
Okay, so you do have a really good strategic asset management plan, and having been involved in, buildings and strategic asset management for about 30 years, I think you've got a good start. It didn't mention that you had a standardised condition assessment tool, which is fairly standard practice. If you look at a building, you look at each of the components and you rate them, and there's a scale and you come up with a score, and then that tells you what standard the building is at. Currently, your documents show that some buildings that you own are rated as excellent, which you would expect because some are newer, like the Baronia Park facility, and some are poor. When it comes to selling any properties, asset sales, I think I would expect to see some detail around their condition to help justify or otherwise the sale of the property. That's simply the point that I'm making. If you've got it, put it in there and use it when you are doing asset sales.
And sorry, just as a follow-up to that, were you saying that you would prioritise the selling of the assets that are in better condition or worse condition?
I'm not saying anything about which sale should be prioritised. I think, I can say that the Hunters Hill Trust is not opposed to the sale of 4 Pittwater Road. We've come before this council before. We're not opposed to some of the sales that you've been proposing, but I think when you assess whether you're going to sell something, the condition of property, if it has a property on it, needs to be included in your report so that councillors have a really full view of what it is that is being proposed to be sold off. It's simply that.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Tennis-Lima.
Thank you, Annette. You stated that you're not opposed to the sale. So what specifically are you opposed to?
I'm commenting in this presentation, I'm objecting to the plans as they are, not because I think that they're a totally bad set of documents.
Okay.
So this
not
is
not against the plans, but against the...
I'm saying they don't, this is not about the sale of 4 Pittwater Road. This item is about the operating plan and the long-term financial plan and the workforce management plan and the fees and charges. And they're not bad documents. The problem is that they're very ambiguous and unclear. And it's really hard if you're sitting in the community to be able to, make definitive judgments about what council is proposing. I am concerned about continuing operating deficits year after year, and I don't think these plans have corrected that. Okay. Fine to talk about adding in capital items, but that really doesn't address the underlying deficits that council has year after year.
Okay, so to be clear, because I'm confused and I respect that this is not my, you've come in and obviously spoken in the spirit of getting some clarification. What I've heard has been a strong objection because you're quoting or claiming there's an ambiguity and a lack of transparency in the documentation, and you'd like to see further detail But in principle, you're not objecting to the sale. You're objecting to the rationale behind the sale.
This isn't about the sale of anything. This is about the plans.
Okay,
Other
okay.
people will speak
Yeah.
to the sale,
Yeah.
but, you know, this is about the plans. And I think that the plans don't tell us the full story about what's happening in council. I would like to see more detail. And I think what I'm seeking to do is to make some input into the discussion that council will have about the adoption of these plans.
Okay.
That's all.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Vergara.
It's probably a clarification, two clarifications, probably three, Mr. Mayor. So this is the plan, the budget and the strategy. So they are naturally high level. They don't make any decisions about anything. Where if we're going to sell something, a separate paper will be brought to council.
Correct.
If we're going to buy something, a separate paper will be brought to council.
Oh, they
Those
have
separate papers will
assumptions.
those papers will include the details.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Thank you, Annette. Councillors, we have a report with a recommendation on page 27. Any discussion on this? Moved Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Lane.
I know, I was going to move it, but
Yep. Yes, Councillor. Moved Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Kassab. Councillor Vergara, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Look, we've got a forecast deficit before capital items of 1.4. We're a small council, we rely on grants. We do that really well. As I understand, the only way we can have an underlying surplus is if we increase own source revenue or decrease spending. That to me is what the operational plan and budget, both of those things are what we're trying to achieve in the long term. So it is a fantastic result that we have a surplus after capital items. It's a really good start going forward. So I commend the plan.
Councillor Vergara. Councillor Lane, speaking against the motion?
no, I'd like to move an amending motion. Sorry, I was a bit slow.
Move an amendment or an
amendment if it's
to the motion or a foreshadowed motion?
An amendment if it's accepted, otherwise a foreshadowed.
Yep.
And I've put it through the resolve system.
We're just about to bring it up for it.
Great. Bit of text.
For the many hundreds and thousands of people watching online, this is the first time we're using the new system. So fingers crossed. We actually
Got everything crossed. There.
Okay. So that's the motion. And there's an amendment that's been.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Great.
It's long.
Sorry. So roll back up. Is to add that subject to 4 and 5.
That's right. And then the substantive text is in 4 and 5.
Yes. Please roll down. Roll down if you could.
So it's just a couple of changes prior to exhibition, which I'll talk to in a minute. But the first one is to amend the operational plan to provide an explanation of the costs associated with the asset management plan, given it's less than 5 years old, an explanation of the materials and services under the software and information systems. And then in relation to the long-term financial plan, there's a few more points if you scroll down a bit further, sorry. Great, so capture the assumptions for developer contributions under financial assumptions, add a sensitivity analysis under risks and LTFP sensitivity to test the impact of a 3% developer contribution from 2026-7 onwards. Third, to provide an explanation or assumptions around the 29,000, well, let's call it 30 for developer contributions in 27-8, given that Hill PDA's own analysis of the Gladesville master plan, there's a reference there, suggests a construction cost of $72 million for 4 to 1. So 1% would be 37 million.
No, I don't think.
3% would be 11.5. Sorry,
37 million would be lovely,
wouldn't it? Yeah, 11.5. So sorry, I have to amend that to reflect the correct numbers. Provide an explanation or assumptions to the disposal of assets and list the assets so that there can be an adequate comment, and include an amount for the reconstruction of Woolwich Baths pontoon in 2027-8, given that this has been indicated to the community and wasn't identified, should have said in the annual plan for 2026-7. Now, the reason for this, I agree with.
Sorry, councillor Lane, a question, and then I'll go to councillor Vergara as to whether or not she accepts the amendment. Could this not be done as explanatory notes when this goes out for public exhibition? If these are items you wish to get more information on, which I think is the crux of most of these amendments, could that not just be done by an explanatory note as part of the reference pack?
It's not for my benefit, it's for the benefit of the public.
That's what I mean, as an explanatory note when this goes out to public exhibition.
If that's the form it takes, I don't have a. I think again the way that for example, the long-term financial plan is structured with an assumptions page and with a sensitivities page. I'm suggesting we put in the assumptions and the sensitivities in the document. But look, the form is less of the concern as what Annette raised, which is that there's some material information which is really hard to understand on the face of the documents, and I've concentrated on the main ones. So the very large expenditure items and a couple of areas of ambiguity.
Councillor Vergara, is that accepted into the motion?
Well, I suppose I was going to ask the same question, like through you to the general manager. Are these the type of things that appropriately go into these types of documents by way of explanatory note or assumptions? And if they are, then they seem sensible to me.
Look, I think we can clarify most of these in the document, councillors. Obviously, with the exception of the mistake in relation to
we can't.
But 7/12s. But I think I've basically got answers from the director on all these already today.
Right.
So,
and look,
I think some of them have already been provided to councillor Lane on the stuff we gave you the other day.
to me personally, yes,
so
but not to
you've
the public.
got the
That's
answers.
right.
You know what the answers are.
That's right. And in relation to C, I think I would be happy to delete from the word noting onwards because it's superfluous to the purpose. So could you say provide an explanation?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is adopting the financial plan going out to public exhibition with the amendment of these items.
Yes.
So you're not suggesting it comes back to council.
No.
No.
Okay.
Oh well, I mean after consultation.
After the consultation, yes.
Otherwise, we won't make the deadline.
Yeah. That's what you said. The risk and LTFP sensitivity on the 7/12s is sort of up to the department really. But
we can make some. We'll make some.
you can make some commentary about it, I suppose.
I think you probably don't need subject to 4 and 5 on 2 because
Councillor Vergara, are you comfortable adding these?
Yep.
Yes. So they'll go into the motion. Yep. And does that adequately provide the staff direction, particularly around the assumptions of the 29,975? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Seconder of the motion, comfortable?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, that becomes the motion. Councillors, any further discussion on this item? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank staff, and I really appreciate the opportunity to put my issues to staff directly. And I think I started off with 150 odd dot points, and I note after analysing that we've got it down to 111. So
all savings, I hope, councillor.
So I thank staff for their input and contribution. Some of it is not monumental, but I thought it would be useful to raise those various issues. However, I speak against adoption of documentations at this stage. I think if we look at that income and general fund statement on the long-term financial plan, It tells a lot to me in terms of where the council is heading financially. And I disagree that the net operating result before capital and capital items is not important. That is the fundamental building block in the local government sector for assessing the financial sustainability of a council. And here we are, after all these assumptions and hypotheticals, I might add, in some of the statements in the document, we're still almost 2 million in the red after 10 years. So we're going to do all these projects and do all this sale of assets and whatever, get all this income from development to still end up $2 million in the red. To me, that is not sustainable, and it's certainly not an indication of good financial management. We have in the budget, or not, that's where I get a bit confused, not confused, but concerned, is that we talk in the documentation in the long-term plan about hypotheticals. We talk about achieving $41.5 million sale of assets. No comment as to where that comes from or what that is. We make reference to $26 million in developer contributions. Again, it's in that section that says hypothetical. We then move to the library and we're talking about a $40 million project. To me, I've never seen a business plan or a financial plan that would justify spending that sort of money or even having it on council's book as an active project. It says in this document that it is in development of detailed plans. Again, I urge council diving into a massive project well beyond what this council has ever entered into, and I say most councils have failed on. Look at North Sydney and a whole range of other farcical outcomes, even our own Graham Park facility ran well over budget. So our ability, our capacity to deliver on such a complex and expensive project without a business case, without any feasibility, and to be a cornerstone in our whole rhetoric in these documents, I think is a recipe for disaster and will be doing an injustice to our community. The issue of transparency, I think, is quite critical, but it's been raised by the person tonight speaking. Council spent an enormous amount of money on developing a digital asset management program. In that, it had a very sophisticated ability to analyse assets and expenditure at all different levels of its life cycle to come up with a very transparent and evidence-based decision making. These documents provide none of that. We seem to be reinventing the wheel with a stamp or whatever it is. We've done all the data collection. We've exhausted ourselves analysing our streets and footpaths. We've done street-by-street assessment of all the infrastructure and assets. We've done extensive canopy cover and heat and God knows what with our trees. We've got every bit of data we need to make transparent and evidence-based decision making. I don't see any of that in these documents. It is just trust us. These are the important projects. For example, we state in here we're going to spend several $100,000 in Mary Street from the loop through to the roundabout. That was just done a year or two ago, both curb, guttering and the surface. And I know the General Manager has sent me a note to explain that it's not there, it's actually in front of the church or below the church. to me, that gives me no confidence that we are analysing the data we have and even presenting it in a way that's credible. There's a couple of examples of that. There's High Street as well. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I do have real concerns about the way that we do our works program, particularly in light of the failures that we've had in the infrastructure we've repaired. Roads are a classic. Look at Paul Street, it's in the budget this year, but that was only done 5 years ago. No one is looking at, if you use that system that we had a few years ago, no one is looking at the subbase, the need for construction of the road in a proper way rather than just using our rate variation, SRV, to put a skim across the whole municipality. The end of Mary Street near the roundabout was just breaking up 6 months after. So we've got High Street in there. I can't see what you can do with High Street. So to me, there isn't an explanation to provide the evidence and the transparency to justify these expenditures. I see that as a major problem in what the budget is presenting. A few other key points that, where am I? Ooh, I did have another page here. Yeah, I've talked about those things that don't seem to have substance in terms of the developer contributions and the land sales. Yeah, in terms of the Priory, we've heard about the passion of most residents about the Priory. It's not mentioned at all in this budget. Nothing is allocated to our most important, historic, state-registered, listed building, considering its importance and its opportunity it provides for council. It's moot. Not a word. I think that is disgraceful and needs to be addressed in the process. We have in the budget there, I assume it's this pedestrian crossing out here as a project, but it only represents $336 million, $336,000, of which I thought we had a budget of 900,000, assuming we spent endless knows what on the consultancies. We don't seem to be accounting for where those funds are going to go. Are they not going to be spent? Have they already been spent or been carried forward? But looking at that, it's really not sufficient funds, which we put a grant in for, to deliver that. And that's getting back to this issue of evidence-based transparency, which doesn't appear in this. Yeah, there seems to be, in my mind anyway, a disproportionate allocation of resources and funds to the built and sports environment. There doesn't seem to be much allocated to one of our major assets, which is our bushland and our reserves outside those active playing fields. I think it's only about $70,000 for what represents 40%, 50% of our municipality. Everything seems to be poured into sporting and recreation areas and into other infrastructure needs of council. So it could go on, but there's enough there to justify my concerns. And I do urge council to be very careful in promoting an image that we're going to deliver on a range of projects which we haven't even done the fundamentals on, of a business case and being able to justify what it's going to be, how we're going to fund it. Very important in my mind. And as I say, sort of, there's a myriad of other things which I don't have time to go through now, but I've had the opportunity and staff either accepted or don't. But they're my fundamental reasons why I can't support the documents in the current form.
Thank you,
And one final
Councillor.
thing,
Yeah,
in the recommendation, it says bring back to the June meeting for council to adopt. I would have thought council needs to consider the exhibition responses before it adopts or then adopts. So to me, it's just pointing to the fact that we're going through a process rather than actively going to engage with any concerns raised during the exhibition.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Yes, on the draft plan.
Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor Vigar.
I have a question, through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to Councillor Williams.
Yes.
What I took from that is Councillor Williams says, don't spend it on some things, but spend more on other things. In his view, what shouldn't be spent on. But the question is, let's be transparent and clear. If we spend it on the things he wants, don't spend it on things he doesn't want, do we have a surplus debt operating result before capital grants on his plan? The answer is one of three things. It's yes, no, or I don't know.
I might take that as a comment, Councillor Vigar, unless Councillor Williams wants to respond.
No, I'm not designing the budget.
Okay. All right. Councillor Tannous-Sleeman. You're speaking for the motion? Yes.
Again, probably a clarification with a couple of comments raised by Councillor Williams. I think every council meeting, since I've been a part of it since 18 months ago, every time we talk about budgets, you claim a lack of transparency. You also talk about decisions that are being made by council representatives, and I actually thought that is part of our job description. We are delegated authority to make sound decisions that's economical and inconsistent with community standards. In summary, I think all your points are vague, they're inconsistent, and frankly, it doesn't make any sense.
Councillor Tannous-Sleeman, I might just point you to speak to the budget rather than.
Well, the budget to me very black and white. There's going to be further. Thanks,
Yes, thank you.
There is going to be transparency and there is clarification. And when we need to present business plans, they'll be presented in time, as you've kindly pointed out. I want to make it very, very clear. I am in support of the budget because for the first time, we have a pipeline of significant projects for our LGA that are really going to move the dial for our community. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tannous-Sleeman. Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor Lane. Speaking for the motion.
For the motion. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the General Manager. I think compared to last year's long-term financial, or perhaps to Christian, wherever he is, compared to last year's long-term financial plan, it's looking much healthier, and I think we're trending in the right direction, if I can say that. I know that there were difficult decisions, and I think that the focus has largely been on the operational side, which again, from my previous comments last year, my concern is we were spending a lot of time talking about how we could raise money, but maybe not enough time looking at where we could save money. And this budget, I think, more reflects that idea. I would also like to thank him for providing us with the papers well in advance of this meeting. It's been, again, for these very long papers, a long-term desire, and it did give us the opportunity to really get into the depths of it. And given that the motion itself is to put it on exhibition and that we have now, in my view, clarified the largest areas of uncertainty, I feel comfortable to go to the community and ask the questions that enables us to make the final decision. I suppose, though, I would say that I would have liked that we had the conversation about the items that went in the budget well before the budget was given to us, so that we could have maybe better shaped the things that went in and didn't go in as part of, as Councillor Tannous-Sleeman has said, part of our duties as elected officials. I know, for example, that Councillor Prieston has previously raised that she would like the lighting to be looked at. We talked about the survey of missing footpaths. We all talked about the pontoon being restored. These things could have been discussed among us well in advance, and I am sorry that I didn't make it to the budget workshop, but that was after these papers had already been released, so well too late. And I think that we've already heard from one community member that we are going to hear some concerns around the content of the budget. And so I do hope that when it comes back, there is a fulsome, let's call it, analysis by council and consideration of changes to the budget to reflect that. If we do raise more developer contributions in the future, and I think that the low to medium rise reforms should have a material impact on our future finances, that does allow us to reconsider whether or not asset sales need to happen. And I think that we should also be considering, as part of this strategy, whether we need more information like business cases before committing to major items. But as I said, the intent here is to put it on public exhibition, and I would much rather hear that from the community as well as a considered response from council before making changes. Once again, thank you, General Manager, and I look forward to seeing what the community has to say.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillors, any further discussion?
Reply.
Yeah, in a moment. I'll just say again, and echoing what Councillor Lane just said, thank you to the enormous effort that the staff have put into this budget. To have, and reading from the report, income including capital grants and contributions of 28.86 million and operating expenses of 25.47 million means that we have a net operating result from continued operations of $3.39 million. When you take out capital contributions and funding depreciation, I understand that that is a deficit budget, but in real terms, as an operating council, we are $3.39 million in the black. That is something that needs to continue, and obviously a lot of work needs to go into turning that budget around to the point where we can fund our depreciation and we don't need to be reliant on capital contributions from external parties, mainly state and federal government, although we will always get some contributions from them as an ongoing material item. I don't think that that is something that we should deviate away from, trying to aim for having a actual operating result that is in the black. But I think it's important to note that prior to taking those items out, we are running a positive budget position, which is important. There are some big decisions to be made in the next couple of years by this council. There are some externalities that Councillor Lane has referred to, things like the LMR, which we need to be prepared for. But generally, I think that the task of council to provide community infrastructure, which is detailed in these reports and in the report that's coming up after this, is critical. And I think that the first job of council is to provide those services to the community, which is what I look forward to doing within these plans and the plans that are coming up in the next couple of items. Councillor Degara, would you like to speak? Would you like Rod to reply?
Yes, I just want to say that the prayer tonight must have been from the minister's lips to God's ears, because we've had a small miracle. I can say for the record, I largely agree with Councillor Lane. I think that's a first. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, councillors. I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried with the dissent of Councillor Williams. Councillors, we now move to item 8.3, social infrastructure needs study, President Consulting. Moved. Councillor Kassab, seconded. Tanus Sleeman. Councillor Kassab, do you wish to speak to the item? Oh, sorry, we have a speaker. Apologies. We have a speaker, Maureen Flowers. Sorry, Maureen, I jumped the gun there.
So I
have
thought,
3
I thought you were
minutes.
doing it in another order or something.
That's okay.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Have much cred.
Half of the trust I'm in On behalf of the Trust, I'm addressing the library component of this study. So this is the social infrastructure needs study. One of the key findings is that the Yarn doesn't meet minimum library standards. However, under the current arrangement, our residents have free access to state-of-the-art facilities at Lane Cove Library and can order books online to be delivered locally. This shared service has proved extremely popular with library users and delivered significant financial benefits to council, with a saving of $350,000 every year, a clear win-win. So in light of this and the fact that there is no obligation under state guidelines for councils to operate their own libraries, where is the rationale for spending $40 million on a massive new development on a congested road to include a very large library? Rather than pursuing a financially perilous undertaking of this nature, a logical approach would be to renegotiate a collaboration with Ryde Council, as suggested in the study, in order to meet floor space requirements, and continue the successful arrangement with Lane Cove Council. This will cater for all residents of our LGA and ensure excellent library services without exposing council and ratepayers to a crippling financial burden. But even before the long overdue business case has confirmed its feasibility, council has already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants in order to persuade us there is an immediate and current demand for a Hunters Hill Library on this site. In fact, in the community plan to 2032, residents ranked library services last in priority at 7th, behind financial sustainability. It appears that this new study is simply a rehash of the failed property strategy, with very similar plans already rejected by council and the community in 2021. This raises serious questions about yet another iteration of the same project that will fundamentally alter the character of the leafy, low-rise entrance to Hunters Hill Village, whilst demolishing a period cottage, a clubhouse, and a well-used community hall. If the goal is to rehouse community services, this could be achieved far more cost-effectively by developing and extending their existing site, relocating parking underground. If the reason is to rehouse council offices so that the town hall, which has already had $1 million upgrade, can be repurposed, the community is rightly asking why. And what is the logic of 2 floors of office space when several vacant spaces in the village have proved almost impossible to lease? What is not mentioned...
Sorry, Maureen, I move to extend the time. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Lane. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Thank you.
Another minute. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you. What is not mentioned is that in order to pay for this grandiose scheme, it appears that council is prepared to sell off every bit of land and assets it can lay its hands on. This includes the only childcare centre providing affordable occasional care, the land gifted to the community at Fairland Hall, and multiple parcels of green space that will forever be lost to future generations. So is the delivery of a new district scale library desperately needed on this site? No, not according to population projections, which indicate that future growth will occur in Gladesville, not Hunters Hill. As council's most recent infrastructure project cost more than double its original budget, and ongoing operating costs for a library are estimated at over $700,000 a year, without a compelling and transparent justification, this proposal risks being seen by the community as unnecessary, fiscally irresponsible, and driven by considerations other than public benefit.
Thank you, Maureen. I have a question. The last couple of lines that it was fiscally irresponsible and socially unneeded. Those were similar arguments that you mounted to the upgrade of Fig Tree Park, weren't they?
Yep.
No, the Fig Tree Park was about the 37 trees that was going to...
I recall you speaking specifically to the motion that had no trees removed in that very meeting.
37 trees were being removed. We were asking for that shouldn't be.
In the last iteration of that
Point of order.
Sorry, Councillor Williams. Sorry, Councillor. I do recall when
You've
there
got a
was- when
wonderful
there was
memory.
no-
You know,
when
that
there
was
no
probably about
prescribed
5 years ago. I'm
When there
glad
was
you
no
remember my
trees being
speeches so well.
removed, you also opposed that plan for Fig Tree Park. So
No,
I would ask the question if the if your intention is fiscal responsibility, and you're representing the trust today or yourself.
yes, the trust.
Okay, and the position of the trust is that they do not want a public library in Gladesville Road.
Yes, because
Yes, okay,
there
thank you.
are
No,
other
that's fine.
alternatives.
Councillors, other questions? Councillor Preston.
Firstly, through you, Mr. Mayor, off the back of something Maureen mentioned, maybe a question to the GM about the repurposing of Town Hall in relation to the development of a library up at Gladesville Road. Maureen mentioned there's talk of repurposing Town Hall. Is that legitimate, or is that proposed by the council?
That's something that we'll consider as part of the business case. As to
The
where,
whole Town Hall or
No,
just
no,
the offices?
no, just the office space.
Yes, to be
yeah.
clear.
Just the
Thank
office
you.
space, yeah.
That's what I was looking to
Mhm.
clarify. So
Correct.
just a point of order on those words. Maureen, you mentioned fiscal irresponsibility. So
Mhm.
the trust position in relation to item 8.2, when Annette spoke on behalf of the trust, was around long-term financing and the budget. I'm a bit confused because I wanted to know, does the trust not see value in long-term revenue from rentals? You asked what the purpose was of 2 floors of office
Mhm.
rooms. So I just wanted to know, does the trust not see the value in that from a long-term perspective?
I'm sure if some of them are let, that would be very good. There would be some value, but there's no guarantee. The office space that's
No, there's no
already in
guarantee.
Hunters Hill Village has been unleasable for many years.
Presumably that would be part of a proposal, and at that point, council would determine the best use for.
We haven't had a business case for this as yet, so.
My next question is, you spoke about grandioseness.
Mhm.
Do you not think that our community deserves the best facilities and facilities
Yeah.
of their own, for that matter? Not with reference to shared facilities. That's not, in my view, I stand here advocating for the best facilities for this community. In my view, that is not sufficient.
Okay.
Firstly, it's not a good use of council's funds, and secondly, it's not sufficient. For you to stand here and call it a grandiose proposal is insulting to residents. So I'm a bit confused. Do you want the best for the residents, or do you want mediocrity?
What's proposed at the moment is a 40 million expenditure. So that is what's fiscally difficult to understand. The other thing is that the proposal also does not meet state of the
That's not my
art
question.
library. You're just asking whether we should have facilities. This proposal does not meet that criteria that we've got state of the art facilities, because it is proposing.
To be clear, the trust believes that it's sufficient for Hunters Hill residents to have access only to shared facilities and not facilities of its own. Is that correct?
That's what this plan says. Do you want me to answer your question? Because the
That's
plan.
my question.
The
Yes or no?
plan says that we have to also use Gladesville Library. So
doesn't
this
say
little,
that.
I beg your pardon. It does.
Could I have a
Sorry, councillor, that's fine. It does make reference to opening up that relationship again as a proposal,
Exactly.
but it doesn't. But it does not. It suggests also that we construct a facility at Gladesville Road
But the
for the sorry, Maureen. That we deliver the library at Gladesville Road. So that's the clarity. Councillors, any further questions of Maureen? Thank you. Councillors, we've had a mover and a seconder of this report, and it is just for noting. Councillor Kassab, do you wish to speak to the report?
I just want to thank the staff and Credit Consulting for the report. It's very comprehensive and details the areas of improvement that are required. So I think it's a great place for us to work from moving forward. And And I did have one just side question about, I know that it was mentioned in the CRED report and it's been mentioned before about outdoor gyms. And I was just wondering if there's any plans to bring back the outdoor gyms.
Yeah, that will become part of master planning for parks as we look at redevelopment of equipment and so forth in the various parks and playgrounds. So, yeah, it's yeah, and Jeff can add to that.
The Henley master plan for around Henley, that includes an outdoor gym, and we put in grant funding previously for that. So yes, it does.
Councillor Vergara.
On that, didn't organisation have money for
Rotary.
Yes, money for us for
Rotary
an outdoor gym.
Rotary has money for a proposed set of permanent gym equipment at Clark's Point, which we can do as part of the Clark's Point plan of management. I note that we are supposed to restore the gym equipment, although there are some complications at Boronia Park, which I'd like to get an update on. But also, there's the opportunity to install the equipment at Henley as well, which is part of the master planning that we did at the last iteration.
Really, you'd have one at Clark's Point, Boronia and Henley.
Our public parks,
Seems
yes.
excessive.
If people,
They're far ways away from each other.
Sounds great.
Councillors, any further questions?
Yes, I have.
Councillor Lane, or speaking to the motion?
Question at this point. Are CRED still engaged?
No, they're not currently still engaged, but I can still get work from them. There's some changes you'd like.
Okay, and okay, would we need to put a formal motion, or is that something we could?
What did you want?
You can probably make a request to the staff.
A request to the staff. Yeah, look, I think it's just there are gaps. So as actually, as Maureen mentioned, there isn't any analysis of the Lane Cove Library in the library analysis. It only talks about RIDE, which is just an obvious gap because we have a service agreement. It highlights the lack of playground access and open space access, which is brilliant. I've got to say I'm really happy that the report's finally come to us after many times of asking. However, when it comes to the end, it doesn't have any recommendations about, usually there's the cost delivery priority for the specific playgrounds and open spaces, and none of that's there. It's all just a box that says
That's
to be
that's for council to do now.
Well, I guess, yeah, my concern.
Not really CRED's.
Okay.
Wait a minute, yeah, we've got to cost it up, build it into the capital works program, align it to the 7/12s when we get the 3%. So there's a lot more work still to be done.
Okay, I guess, yeah, and perhaps echoing a little bit of what Maureen is saying. Page 1 of the recommendations is super specific and lists the projects that we would currently like to do, which is unusual for a social infrastructure study. Like there's a difference between saying build a library and we've got 3 options and build this particular library in this location. But then the second page is, again, like I said, lacking in detail. So it just says new and upgraded playgrounds with no detail. I would have preferred that this document was a social needs study and it didn't venture too much into the decisions we might then make on the back of that needs study. And I think that blurring of the line between needs and projects could be improved. There's just some minor errors as well. I think there's some ticks and crosses the wrong way around and things like that. But if there's an opportunity, particularly with CRED, to do the analysis of the Lane Cove Library as part of that library analysis, because as we've all talked about, it does say that the current library is inadequate on its own, and clarification of the needs and projects, and particularly where those deficits in open space are, a bit more clarity around. There's a lovely map, but are there specific parcels which they think are suitable, etc. So again, it's just a final draft. I don't. I'm not going to not note the project, but if there is the opportunity, it would be great to get that.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillors, any further questions? Discussion? Councillor Williams.
I speak against the proposal in the document. Again, because of its, there's always a need for factual-based decision-making. And in this, we've heard that there was no consideration at all of the current arrangement with the library. If you're looking at how you might assess the needs of a community, then you have to look at both aspects, what you're currently doing and what you may do. There's four scenarios there. There's a fifth scenario which Councillor Lane mentioned, and I think needs to be on the table in any of these discussions, whether it's about community social needs, but also about our financial and future project directions. So to me, that is a critical issue. Another thing in the report, we don't see mention, well, we see certain council facilities identified as places for meetings, etc. We have the Bronya Park facility nominated as 900 square metres of public usable space for meetings. My calculation from Google Earth is 337 square metres. Likewise, most of the figures here take into account or neglect to take into account a range of options for uses within these facilities. We don't have Henley Cottage there. We don't have the fire station there. We don't have the clubhouse on Blaisdell Road there. There's big omissions in terms of how we've presented what's available. There's also inaccuracies, substantial inaccuracies in the way that these things have been described. If you look at things like the Henley Hens, the garden, community garden, it's not mentioned. There's a lot of photos, but it's not mentioned as part of our social fabric. And I think that deserves some attention in this document. And I'm surprised that consultants didn't identify that, seeing they've used a lot of their photographs here in the document. The other issue, which we'll talk about later, is the Pittwater Road thing. There's no reference in there, except for one little line towards in the document, that there's an occasional daycare operating there. It's been there for a long time and provides a big service to this community. Where is that going to operate, or don't we need it anymore? There's no analysis in the documentation as to the needs for that sort of service in our community. So to me, there's a range of needing evidence-based information. There's omissions which I think are quite important in our understanding our path forward with our social infrastructure. And it's curious as to where they get their figures for what our growth is into the future. Nobody's ever given that to me as to what the LMR, whatever it is, LMR,
low medium rise,
it is going to realistically produce for us that would underpin the needs of the future. And of course, that development's now going to occur in the western portion of our municipality. Doesn't seem to be much focus on how the social needs of those people will be met in this documentation. So to me, it has omissions, it has a need to be evidence-based, and I do think that to just explore our current library arrangement, we've been through the past with RIDE, which was a diabolical disaster, and separation from that after 60 years of contributing tens of $millions into that library. We got nothing. Now our residents have to pay to go there. So I wouldn't be enthusiastic about going back and forming a relationship there if we could. So, Mr. Mayor, I think the report needs to be worked on further. And as I pointed out, there's omissions and inconsistencies.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillors, any further discussion on this? Councillor Lane.
Oh, sorry, just an additional question. When the report lists the analysis that was done, I can't find the exact page. It goes into a lot of detail about what the open space and recreation strategy recommended, but it doesn't go into the same level of detail about what the LSPS recommends. And the reason I raise that is that in the LSPS, if I can, there's a specific reference to under our infrastructure after the talk about a library service. Maintenance and repairs to Henley Community Centre, Fairland Hall and the Gladesville Occasional Childcare Centre to address urgent building repairs and maintenance matters, etc. And then when you get to the table of council-owned community spaces, some of these, again, there's no mention of Gladesville Occasional Community as Councillor Williams has mentioned, but under Fairland Hall, it just says poor condition. And this is unusual because in the others, it just says condition, so excellent or poor. Whereas this one, we have a new category. It says condition and planned upgrades. So 3 of the poors are planned for an upgrade. One of them is sort of flagged, the Wheel Park Hall. And then CA Fairland Hall just says poor condition. And again, I guess for consistency, if the LSPS already calls it out, we should at least have a reference to the intention of the LSPS to upgrade the hall. It shouldn't just be left as poor in the analysis, or so there should be something in there explaining why we no longer think it needs repair. So could we also look at that?
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillors, any further discussion on this item? Noting the report. Right of reply, Councillor? No. Put the motion, all those in favour? Against, that is carried with the dissent of Councillor Williams. Now move to item 8.4, disposal of council land at 4 Pittwater Road, Gladesville. We have 2 speakers to this item. The first speaker is Marilyn Mallock. Thank you, Mel. You have 3 minutes.
So that I can try and be on time, I am talking about the Gladesville Occasional Childcare Centre, and throughout my paper, I'll refer to it just as the centre.
That's okay.
Good, thank you. The Hunters Hill Trust objects to the sale of 4 Pittwater Road, Gladesville, because the submission to council is deficient in not recognising the important place that the Gladesville Occasional Childcare Centre has in the Gladesville and Hunters Hill community and does not guarantee its continuity. The paper ends with a social impact assessment that concludes that the current licence term is 1 January to 31 December 2026, and then, if agreed by the licensor, a monthly licence. This will be discussed during negotiations with City of Ryde or other potential purchasers. This is not a sufficient commitment to an organisation that is providing a unique service to Hunters Hill residents. The paper proposes that the disposal of 4 Pittwater Road will not compromise council's ability to meet identified social infrastructure needs. This repeats a mistake or misunderstanding in the paper at 8.3, the social infrastructure needs study. In this study, long day care, preschools and out of school hours care are identified as essential services. However, it neglects to mention occasional care, which is non-regular short-term care for children 0 to 5, funded by the New South Wales Government. It is designed for incidental needs, unexpected emergencies or casual appointments. This is a separate form of childcare and is distinct from long day care and preschool. The centre is currently only 1 or 2 services in Gladesville, Hunters Hill, offering occasional care. It has been operating since 1983. It is not a profit service open to parents requiring care from 8:30 to 4 and also sessional care. This is particularly for non-working parents, grandparents providing informal care, and carers needing to attend appointments. The removal of this service will discriminate against these groups. It will especially impact on Hunters Hill children, as these little people are the main users of the centre. The only other service offering occasional care is a for-profit service, providing much more expensive care, nearly double the rate of Gladesville Centre per day. The centre is accessible to low-income families, and its closure would impact on them. When we wrote to you previously in September 2024, we pointed this out. It is a pity that this has not been accepted and carried.
Sorry, Mel, a move of extension of time, moved councillor Tenner-Sleeman, seconded councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. You have another minute. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you. It is a pity that it has not been accepted and carried forward in this submission. At that time, council had demonstrated its value by awarding community grants to it over the previous 4 years. Council would not do this if it did not believe that the centre had an important social impact. When council considered the sale of this land previously, it had not consulted or provided reassurances to the centre that it would be relocated if the property was sold. We consider that council has had ample time to remedy this oversight. But we understand that council sees the ownership of this land as an anomaly and that childcare may not be for Pittwater Road's highest and best use in purely economic terms. But surely council should recognise the service's social licence and extend a lifeline to it by guaranteeing it a new home. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Yes, councillor Biara.
There you go.
You said the Hunters Hill children are the main users of the centre.
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I went there today and walked around and met everybody and asked them. And that's what they've told me, both the director and the girls working there.
That today is the
Today, yes. And as a single mum and a grandmother, and knowing the importance of having that facility and how it's growing, especially around that area, but that's what they were said. Most of the children come from Hunters Hill. Go and check and talk to them.
Have you checked?
We've asked for those statistics, but we haven't received them.
That was a verbal.
Yep,
Yes.
no, we've asked for those statistics. They have not been provided to council.
No, when I went
About
to
the demographics.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
about where each of the
Mhm.
relevant children come from. It is a mild irrelevance, in my view, where they come from.
Yeah.
But yes. Councillors, any other questions of Mel? No, thank you. Councillors, we have a motion on page 372. Sorry. Oh, we've got a second speaker. Sorry. Jim Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Jim.
You're right. I endorse the earlier addresses of Net, Maureen and Mel. There is a close relationship between strategic planning, the budget, community infrastructure and disposal of council land. None should be considered in isolation. We're strongly opposing disposal of land where this has been about funding operational deficits. And some recent proposals have been just about that, even though they were not successful. If assets are to be disposed of to contribute to the acquisition of new facilities, then this process must be fully explained so the community can understand the choice and express an informed preference if the existing asset is more valuable than the contribution to the new facility. I do not oppose the eventual disposal of Pittwater Road. However, we need to understand more. Pittwater Road is surrounded by the John Wilson car park and the Gladesville Library, both owned by the City of Ryde. The combination of these sites with 4 Pittwater Road have an extraordinary development potential. Already zoned MU1, with a maximum building height of 22 metres and a floor space ratio of 2.6 to 1, and these undoubtedly will be increased by a future planning proposal by the City of Ryde. Following the combination of these sites, redevelopment it is unlikely the City of Ryde will continue the library service at the current Gladesville Library. Some will recall that from 2018, there was an expectation that Gladesville Library would be part of the Hunters Hill Council's Gladesville Master Plan. And after the discontinuation of the Ryde Hunters Hill Library arrangement, Council choosing to Ryde Council choosing to discriminately charge our residents an annual fee, which is now $120. We now find that few of our residents are using Gladesville Library services where this fee applies. This site will have few encumbrances. It will be far easier to develop than the GSV. This council needs to consider whether it's better to delay this sale and have a seat at the table when there is a move toward the site's development. And this would surely see a significant increase in the site's price and may provide a voice about the site's future. Holding off on the sale until more is known could benefit both the Gladesville Occasional Care and council's long-term finances. I also believe that there should be a benefit to the people of Gladesville. Following comments from both Councillor Williams and Maureen, and given the particularly difficult times we live in at the present time, so I really question whether.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, extension of time, seconded Councillor Lane. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Good, thank you. I really question whether we can afford the $40 million, which will undoubtedly escalate for a new library. So if we are to have an expanded library service, which does seem doubtful, and it is significantly funded by the sale of this site, and also from developer contributions for development in Gladesville, my view would be that that library should be sited in Gladesville, where, as has been pointed out earlier, that's where our residents or where our future population growth lies. Thank you.
Jim, you stay there for a second. Councillors, any questions? No, thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation on page 372 of the paper. Moved. Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Tanez Sleeman. Any discussion? Councillor Vergara?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, you said the issue of who patrons the centre is irrelevant. When you look at the criteria, we've got to look at the amenity to the local community. That has to be the local community we serve. So I don't think it is irrelevant. I think it is a relevant consideration, and I would call for the data to be provided. Because the job of us sitting here today is not just one of doesn't provide a service. You've got to balance the service, the financial cost, and the opportunity cost. And I think because something will be lost. There will be a loss if it goes. But we have to look at, well, what's it going to cost me if I keep it? We've got to pay $350,000 to repair the roof of the Hunters Hill Primary School. What's that? Have you done anything else? What's that going to cost us if we keep it? And what do we give up if we keep it, if it holds? And I think when you put those three things together, this makes sense as something that should be repurposed and reinvested in assets and infrastructure and services for the local community.
I would. It would be easier to sympathise if Ryde Council had been more of a partner to us with what happened with the library, but I have to say that has been a very long-running and grating issue that Councillor Williams rightly pointed out earlier. Sorry, councillors. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't speak against the concept of selling the site, but I do raise several concerns. Before I do that, it says here that it's consistent with the adoption of the adopted property strategy. Council never adopted it.
Yeah, that's a mistake, Council.
Yeah. So to me, this whole debate is about two things. One is the services which that building now provides, and as has been pointed out by one of the speakers, will become greater in need as the population gets denser in that location. I don't care whether it's 80% Hunters Hill residents, 20%, wherever they come from. It's providing a service to the community, and not everything we do can be just focused on Hunters Hill and its residents. We provide a community service for other residents to use. But as we've heard, the comments tonight is that it's basically used by our residents. There's no provision in here for acknowledgement of what might happen to that facility. And again, that was an omission in the social plan that was just discussed. We are in a situation where the second point I'll make is it's about opportunity. Council totally squandered its opportunity with the sale of the Gladesville site. We dealt ourselves out of the negotiation. I think we saw $327 million now is the proposed development. We only got $9 million for something that was intrinsic to the future development of that site. If we were in the negotiation position now, we'd be able to yield a lot more than what we had. And in actual fact, I don't see the evidence of where that has benefited the communities through asset renewal or whatever. We're saying here that this will benefit. There's no indication, which is part of what the sale policy is about, is how you're going to use those funds. We need to be able to specify, if we're going to sell an asset, what it's going to be used for. And just putting into a pot, our experience that we saw through the Gladesville sale is that you lose opportunity if you sell it too soon. And if you don't have a plan as to how you're going to use that money, then that loses opportunity through inflation eating away of it and little bits and pieces taken off for various different purposes. So to me, we're looking at a situation where we're assuming there's only one purchaser, which I don't think is a fair thing to do. We need to have several valuations to give us some confidence as to what the future of this site could yield for council. So to me, I think this is premature. We need to do more homework to make sure we get the best outcome for the current services provided on the site and for the future ability of council to optimise that site. And just as a final comment, we talk about the Ryde Library. That'll go as quickly as they're building when a development's done. So to use that branch library as both a important aspect of the social strategy and as part of our future opportunities for the site, I think is wrong. And I think we need to take a deep breath and look at those two key issues and come back with a more considered approach.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Tanu-Sliman.
Just a point of clarification. I'm not sure what residents voted us in. Was it Hunters Hill community residents or was it Ryde community?
Take it as a comment, councillor.
That's a comment.
Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Lane.
Thank you. I have two different objections to this. One is a technical one and one is more substantive. The technical one is when we go through the assessment against the policy criteria, there are gaps. And so, for example, under amenity and facilities impact, it says any broader community amenity impacts will be tested through the submission process. That public consultation is not a test of the impact of a facility. And so I agree yet again in a first with my fellow councillor.
Two in one meeting.
I know. We'll put up a plaque. That analysis needs to be in the paper for us to make the decisions. Otherwise, we don't know what we're losing. And it's not to say, generally in planning law, you have an environmental impact and you can mitigate that impact. So it's not like we couldn't mitigate it through offering alternative facilities or having an arrangement with Gladesville Occasional Childcare. The mere fact that work hasn't been done and we don't understand the impact of it is itself fatal, in my view, to being able to know whether or not we can proceed with disposal. The same issue occurs under the statutory and legal constraints. So it says that reclassification has been completed. That doesn't really explain whether or not the vesting of this original public health land had any trusts or other conditions associated with it. Fairland Hall, for example, we may have removed the caveat, but we do still hold that land in trust, for example, and hopefully council has a record of that. Under cost to dispose versus value, again, it says that will be quantified in the next report and tested against the expected return. Again, the proposal says that we need to understand before we put it on exhibition whether or not it's going to be worth selling by determining the costs of disposal versus the value. The value in the confidential paper was not, in my view, particularly high and didn't give me the confidence that we were getting the best deal. And I suppose that moves me to the second part, the substantive concern, which is aside from the loss of the Gladesville Occasional Childcare Centre, which I think would be a loss to the residents. And if you look around at other councils, including Lane Cove, they're busy trying to ensure that childcare facilities are being provided. They're in fact going back to the old model of council provided childcare. So I think the idea that we might be moving away from providing certain childcare, which, as we heard, is not actually assessed in the social infrastructure needs strategy, is a risk. But the bigger one for me is I agree with Councillor Williams. I don't think we're going to get the best deal out of selling it. I look at the value. I look at the idea that we're going pretty early to ride and saying, hey, do you want to buy the parcel? I'm thinking, why aren't we pursuing a JV? Why aren't we doing our own scheme so we have a negotiation position to say, this is what 22 stories would look like on our site. I mean, it might be ridiculous, but in my mind, we still need to go through the due diligence of working out what that best value is. And in my experience, a JV between two councils and a developer to do a joint development would probably yield us the best long-term outcome rather than just sort of letting Ride take the lead. So I think, firstly, I do think it just fails because we haven't properly assessed the policy criteria. But even if we do, I would love it to come back as a more fulsome exploration, not only of what we're doing to mitigate the impact on Gladesville Occasional Childcare Centre, but also exploring a little bit more about, is there a JV option? Is there a development option on our own? Like, what are the options here that the highest and best use is being tested against?
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillors, any further discussion on this item? Right reply, Councillor?
No.
No? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillors, we now move to item 8.5, National General Assembly of Local Governments. Move motion. Move Councillor Williams. Seconded Councillor Cassard. Any discussion? Councillor Williams, you have the call.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important that we do participate in these forums because local government needs to have a collective voice, and these sort of forums allow, in this case at a federal level, for that voice to be understood and decided by the constituent councils. I do, obviously, this meeting is going to be in 2026, not 2025. So is that date right? It's only
in the report or in the
report. Yep. So, but besides that, I was just wondering, is the mayor and general manager able to attend that? Because at our recent local government New South Wales conference, we sent 4 delegates, including myself as a non-voting delegate. And from my observation, I was the only one that attended the conference in its fullest. And there's been no explanation as to why other delegates couldn't or didn't. Normally out of these things, we get a report on what is relevant for the council from the voting delegates. We've seen nothing. So I'd like some reassurance that those we've nominated to go will be able to go, and we'll come back to council with the appropriate reporting on what took place and the decisions that are relevant to us.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I did attend that conference and I did vote on behalf of Hunters Hill Council. But I can assure you, I think that we've already confirmed that we're both attending.
Yeah, we're both going.
I have attended ALGA for too long as I've been on council, in fact. I note your reporting probably goes back to an era where Councillor Astridge used to write a very, very fulsome report. The ALGA minutes and that forum is public, so the council can keep abreast of anything that's going on at the ALGA forum. If you want a physical report brought back, I think ALGA provide a summary. I'm happy to provide that summary in the format of a motion to council or a report to council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarity, the report that comes back to council normally is about those resolutions or discussions that are relevant to our situation. So it's not a summary of what would be in the minutes or the outcome of the thing. It's about tailoring it back to us. And I only saw you at the local government conference for the voting, which was one morning, and I didn't see any other delegates attend at any other stage. So I'm just concerned that if we're going to spend this sort of money, we spent a lot of money on the delegates to the last one, but we need to have that commitment that will be there and a commitment to bring back the information to council.
Councillor, I can tell you I was in the conference centre and I was at the conference. You might have been out handing out because you were running. I was inside the conference centre listening to the motions. Councillors, there is a motion in front of us relating to my attendance and the General Manager's attendance of the ALGA conference in Canberra. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Kassan.
I just wanted to voice my intention to also attend using the conference and seminars budget.
Councillor Lane.
I just had a question. Is it possible to get a summary of the motions that council has considered or that have been circulated to council for consideration at the conference?
Councillors can bring a motion and if passed by council, they'll go on to the papers for both ALGA and New South Wales. When is the deadline for that?
I'd have to check when the deadline is for ALGA, but
so if you bring a motion to council to consider at either one of those conferences and it's passed at council, it will then go on to the paper for consideration by the conference.
I've heard from some councillors in other councils that they've already passed motions. I suppose could I ask the General Manager to bring a list of those motions to the meeting?
Usually it's a council or led.
It's all about
council or policies. So if you would like to draft some motions to go to either of those conferences.
No, I'm not proposing a motion. I just because we're voting on motions, if we could understand the motions that have been proposed.
I'll circulate the business paper.
Before you guys go, just so we can talk about the motion.
It's all you can Google it. It's all public.
And I can circulate once we get there.
But we can circulate it.
It's generally it's just a link to the paper, so it should be able to circulate.
It's just a link. It's a public link. Yeah,
sure. Okay.
So if you Google ALGA or LGNSW, all those motions will be there, but we can circulate them to you prior.
But I suppose the question in the back of my mind is how do we decide how we're going to vote on the?
You delegate the authority to me as the mayor and the other voting delegate to make those recommendations for you at the conference. So unless you want to go and vote on each motion in council prior to me going down, which you're very happy to propose, but I'm not sure it would get past council. That's general. If you want to have a sidebar with me about something that you feel strongly about, just give me a call.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
The ALGA conference has a fairly consistent set of motions relating to constitutional recognition, federal assistance grants, infrastructure contributions, mainly from councils in rural regional areas. There's a fairly comprehensive list, but then as political cycles change and things are brought up, new motions will come up, and that's they tend to be grouped in ALGA because ALGA is a much bigger conference than LGNSW. And then occasionally, as Councillor Williams was involved, I voted for you, Councillor Williams, by the way. For the public record.
Not often enough.
Yeah. I vote for you sometimes, Councillor Williams. Yes, councillor Tanus Lehman,
Just
question?
sorry, just a point of clarification. When's the cutoff to submit any motions to be?
Oh, councillor, sorry, councillor Tanus Lehman, and the general manager will circulate that.
I haven't seen it recently, so I didn't think it was finished yet.
Councillors do tend to put them up in the months leading up to, not just in the meeting before. You have to put them onto the agenda.
Yeah.
Any further discussion, councillors? If not, got a reply? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Item 8.6, investments report, 31st March 26, moved. Councillor Tanus Lehman, seconded Councillor Williams. Any questions?
No question.
Question, Councillor Vergara.
Appears to be underperformance over the last month on the portfolio against the Osborne bank bill rate, but we're good for the 12 months. I'm assuming that's just the timing thing, it's not a structural thing.
Correct.
Through Chair, that's correct.
Oh, now that you read the investment report, councillor, that's great. Very good.
I'm an economist.
Item 8.7, report on legal matters, March 2026, moved. Councillor Williams, seconded. Mayor, any questions, councillors? Councillor Vergara again?
Am I reading it right? There was an appeal filed?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, what are we voting on? We had the next.
Legal matters.
Vote on the investment. We did.
We did.
We did. All right.
I know we did.
I will move back to investments. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Item 8.7, report on legal matters, moved. Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Tanus Lehman. Any discussion, Councillor Vergara, you got a question?
I thought we had been told that an appeal, the time for an appeal on the marina issue had expired without an appeal being filed, but this now says an appeal has been filed.
Or an intention to file.
That's, you know what I mean?
There is
It
some
actually-
statute or obligation that allows the court to give an extension of 6 months, I believe, but I'm not, it's not my space. I'll pass the general manager the comment.
I'm not aware of that.
On page 406,
Okay.
in the first row at the bottom.
I think it's actually, that's an error in the report.
We will
I'll come
get back to you.
tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My last update was they had not lodged
Yeah.
any appeal, and I don't believe they got any time
Left.
Councillor
Lane.
Thank you. My first question was why we still had that on. But my second one was on the very final page, reference 476611. I think that's our first LMR application, which has gone straight to court. My question was whether or not we can get a briefing either out of session or in a future council meeting on the cost estimates and a little bit more detail on that.
Yes, happy to do that. I'm hoping we might divert this away from the courts, but staff are working very hard to try and contain the legal costs at the moment.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Vergara.
Just on that, so that was the cost, was it?
Yes.
Can we get an advice on prospects as well? Like, because it's the first one, we'd like to understand.
It might be worth at some point getting our external legal advisors in to have a discussion about that. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillors, any discussion, any further questions or clarifications needed? Any further discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Item 8.8, development applications determined under delegated authority in March 2026. Moved. Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Tanus Lehman. Any discussion? Councillor Lane.
Question. I note that we've gone to a slightly different format where the tree removals are a bit more summary. Can I just, to the director through you, General Manager, confirm that we've updated our, we're now using the tree list that's in the urban forest strategy?
Yes, so we're confirming that with the arborist that we use, but the format has just changed because then it reduces the duplication between the reports and then reduces the amount of errors and omissions, so we can be very clean and clear as to what's been included in those tree DAs, but the clarification around the urban forest trees being used is still coming.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Minutes of the Conservation Advisory Panel held 18th March 2026. Moved Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Tenese-Lehmann. Any questions? Discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. There's been no correspondence.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, correspondence. I was just wondering, traditionally we've received correspondence from either yourself or the general manager that are relevant for council to understand. I just noticed that for a long period now, I assume that both yourself and the general manager aren't getting any correspondence that would be relevant to the councillors. Is that correct?
Correspondence generally is going into the, if it's relevant departmental correspondence, is going into the Chronicle. If you'd like it brought to council as well, but it would be a duplication.
Well, no, there's no public face of the Chronicle. And I think the purpose of the correspondence in this business paper is for not only councillors, but for the community to understand what directives the minister might be giving, what updates in whatever.
Happy to put those in. Actually, that's a fair point.
Thank you.
Questions with notice, councillors, for tabling, and then I need a motion, councillors, to go into confidential session to preside over the last item. Moved, councillor.
Can I table a question or?
Yes, you can hand it up. Yep. Yes.
You want me to do it now?
I've got no notice, but I'd like a question.
Yeah. Questions with notice.
Yeah, but
This is not a question.
this is not
Question
the
without
answer
notice.
tonight. I'll-
Question
Yes.
without
Could you
I'll
just
formally add it. Yep.
formalise it, and we'll go into the paper.
Yep, sure.
Confidential items, got a motion to move into confidential session. Move Councillor Tenese-Lehmann, seconded Councillor Kassab. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will shut down the live stream.
Close to.